after the victories like the marriage equality referendum, repeal and the recent blasphemy referendum, the passing of the sex ed bill coming into law seems like a natural progression. The bill has passed the first stage in the Dáil, but is currently stuck in the committee stage. The government and Fianna Fáil have been dragging their feet on the topic of sex ed, and leaving the bill in committee stage is an attempt, as we see it, to starve it of oxygen. But we don't accept the delays. We want the bill to move to the next phase and to come into practice as soon as possible. And if the bill passes, it means that schools can't opt out of sex ed on the grounds of religious ethos as they currently can. And it would go a long way to ensuring that every student, regardless of what school they attend, will access evidence-based, objective sex education that focuses on issues such as consent, LGBT issues, contraception, to name a few. So we have a few speakers, and so I'm first going to ask Paul Murphy, TD, to come up and to say a few words.
I think obviously in terms of the struggle to separate church and state, we had a very important victory at the weekend in terms of the blasphemy referendum, where it's the second referendum in the course of a year where people overwhelmingly backed, moves in the direction of a constitution which isn't dominated by the Catholic Church and doesn't include in reality the connection between church and state. But when you come for the struggle for sex education and the sex education bill, you see in reality how the fundamentally conservative nature of the political establishment in this country and the capitalist establishment which lies behind them are going to try to avoid doing things which represent a fundamental breach between church and state. And their whole approach on the issue of sex education just reeks of absolute cynicism. For Fianna Fáil to vote for, allow this bill to pass second stage, and then to simply attempt to let it die in committee, and for the government to accept the fact that it passes second stage in the Dáil, but then refuse to provide the resources through a money message to allow the bill to proceed by hiding behind a technical argument. It means that they don't want to touch the key issues of education and the key issues of health, where the church has control because of all the implications that has for what kind of society we're going to have, what kind of health service we're going to have, what kind of education we're going to have provided, and the fact that you have very conservative interests that are going to continue to try and hang on to the position of the church and the connection between church and state. But just the reference point of the repeal referendum is obviously key. It gives the example of how tremendous big victories can be won by movements, and that's for us the key lesson in terms of how we're going to push sex education on. So there's been a lot happening in terms of hearings in the Dáil, in the Education Committee, which have been very interesting and very useful, and every credible expert who came in and who wasn't speaking for effectively the Catholic Church admitted that what you have at the moment is a massive problem in terms of sex education that is completely trapped in the dark ages. And those who were asked about it and looked about it also admitted that you can't move to have the kind of progressive, objective, scientific sex education that we want to have without changing the Education Act, without removing the reference effectively to religious ethos which exists in there and which allows schools to continue not to provide proper sex education regardless of what it says in the curriculum. So they acknowledge that there's a problem, but then in reality the government is going to refuse to do anything about it. And I think what we have to do is to continue to bang the drum inside the Dáil at it, to try and push the Education Committee to take committee stage of this bill, which they seem to be very hesitant about doing at the moment. But the main way to do that and the main way to push this on is to encourage the discussion in society generally, where the vast majority of people have progressive attitudes about these things, where you look about the positive response to the consent classes in third level education, which we heard in the Education Committee last week, where people's attitudes generally, as reflected in the blasphemy referendum, as reflected in the Eighth Amendment referendum, are for a progressive secular society. That's what people are yearning for. So we have to bring that out around the question of sex education, look at opportunities for mobilization of people, in particular young people, demanding progressive sex education, demanding consent classes, demanding consent workshops, etc., and try to bring that pressure to bear on the establishment political parties to try and push this issue on. Thanks a lot.
Our next speaker is Eve. Eve is a secondary school student, and I just want to mention the fact that we chose today to demonstrate outside the Department of Education. This is very deliberate. We want to make a point that we're young people asking for education in this regard.
Eve, it's Mr. Eve Crimi. I'm in 6th year in Gloucester Isagon, which is a Catholic school part of the Edmund Rice Schools Trust. I've never been bullied as a gay woman in the school system. However, I realise not everyone's been that lucky, and the experience of realising that I liked girls was made an awful lot more difficult by the fact that the possibility of being gay had never been previously discussed in primary or secondary school. It was assumed and pretended that every girl in Gloucester Isagon not only liked boys, but liked boys in Gloucester only. The atmosphere was not dangerously homophobic, but it was repressively heteronormative. And sex education did little or nothing to do about that. In fairness, my teachers have been sound. They were some of the first people I came out to. They read my hormonal gay teenage poetry and said nice stuff about it, and they always listened and offered support. And this, I think, proves to me just how important it is to have a supportive education system for LGBT students. We've also been moving forward. We had an LGBT plus day recently. Trans and non-binary students have been allowed to change their names, but there's still an awful lot to do in terms of getting over this idea that the education system is for Catholics and by Catholics, and that's not going to change. Even amongst teenagers, LGBT plus people are often viewed as a source of merriment or jokes. They're there for straight people's entertainment, not people in their own right with multiple characteristics, one of which happens to be their gender or sexual orientation. People are always presumed straight until proven gay, or bi, or whatever, and realising one is LGBT plus is therefore made more confusing than it has to be. Media from a less tolerant age also kind of emphasises the difficult sides of being LGBT, which makes it scarier than it has to be, I think. And you're not given any kind of positive representation or useful education to make it easier. A lot of this is ignorance. People should know the terms relating to gender and sexual orientation before they meet people in college who are those things, because it'll make adult life in the modern world less confusing for them, and it'll help them be better friends to others. We need LGBT inclusive sex education to cover LGBT sexual health as part of sexual health in general. We need to not presume that people are straight, because many students will not feel comfortable asking in front of the class about LGBT plus sexual health, and therefore unless it's part of the curriculum, people won't find out at all. Teachers, parents and students need to be taught and informed and supported, and this needs to start at a primary school level. Even before you actually talk about sexual matters, you need to acknowledge the existence of homosexual or bisexual romantic relationships from the same age you acknowledge straight ones, i.e. usually birth. This double standard where it is inappropriate for me to tell my 10-year-old brother that I like women, but not inappropriate for a 5-year-old to watch a film all about a princess finding a prince is frankly ridiculous. Unfortunately, religious control can prevent talking about these issues properly. For example, when my sister was in 6th class, at the time of the marriage referendum, the students in the class asked the teacher if they could talk about it, and the teacher said he'd like to, but they weren't allowed because it was a Catholic school. LGBT rights in schools are certainly coming forward. We must continue to strive for an education where all teachers and classmates are as kind as mine were and twice as informed. Init, Rodag mas gwelga, the burner and make cricket tag fall. Tommy Gubber and Bactus Shaw and Sarah, August Kernchik, Lunder and Bactus Echo, Model and Nanskaliacht, a current Gohan and Alti, August Gohan Adini Oga Kinkeen, August the Ordvala La Dolga Solidarity, Lahai or the Harrington and Cartha, August Lasson and Alti Manskal as a tear show. Taken Dalton a tear show in the 5 of winning Lesson Chorus at Docus Ganesh, a drum look more in the Scolana. Is Lairger go ruddy end of Can Idicus Ganesh, Olrock, Bunha Iriki, August Near Radagoon, a Kirkin Keening Oxgull, Kulua August Gerfader. It's Umi 5 a Cross Eater, a Scolana, August a Sucking a Heron, Marieller Aspa Olish Flanta Ganesh, Kiarta LDT, August Cohillo, no consent. The Aspa Olas and Water Kunas Galler Ganesha Hakand, the Aspa Olas and Flanta Ganesh LDT, August Tishomor Hampa than Fullasi, Trinity Yen and Chorus at Docus Ganesh, Eric Kerr, so then just didn't you there ligantar who nachhfuil daoine LGT sna scoilna agus tá sin rud éige na torlíonn do bhaoine fósta áta ag an eile agus ní an or scoilna féin. Ar nó ní bacór cumach aonrad buinte le an éis fréimhe bacór cumach gachrad buinte le an éis fréimhe has a cóheilú agus an tuiscint gur mí úsáid agus bhréigen é aon gníomh gan éis gan cóheilú. Tá fáiban na mór an cinnte maidir le cípa nó harassment gan éis obíocht tú a dhéanamh ar bhaná agus béim a chur pléisiir na fearr hetra gan éis a gcónaí. Chuirtar an milliún ar gcuoine a bhar tríd mí úsáid agus cípa gan éis agus sanna fáiban na seo feice agam go ríthallar fiú amás déigirí ó coolraí librálacha. Credim go bhhéiteach golóir dus na fáiban na seo a laidú trí idicus gan éis a churfáil a legan béim ar an ggóheilú ar ceartan amán agus ar stereotypi dúiltacha insna rid. Is gádainn múna dornáltaí an tábhacht am muin ledíine a bhar tríd mí úsáid a creidint agus taú lo. Is gádainn múna dornáltaí chun is másasa acu ar cearta agus féinréal churpa chéile. Tá billa an idicus gan éis ionta tábhachta chuna seo dhéanamh. Tus gur gád daltaí agus múntúirí olalas agus más ar an ggóheilú agus ar cearta LGT a chur cín iad féin freisin, ach tá an curriculum éigandach ar chun na nithe seo ar chucin cín in ngach scóil sa tír. Mar níl éon scóil ná aon agríocht rálaúnta níos irde ná cearta daine na náltaí. Tá an billa seo mar céim tábhachtach go grothú córas idicus atá bunathe ar leas daltaí ó gach cuara agus ní ar chléintar rálaúnta. I mthór féin is fiúdí aglasú omlánaí ana bheith scóna chun go maiid siad chom agus mar chuid de fear public de aithníon lúp gach saorónach agus is céim riachtanach de seo aon billa am idicus gan éis. Is cuid beag dúir néanra iad na daltaí má scola ach na lucanna atá acu faoi láthair siad na lucanna am an tír again tro blian agus sin an fág bhfuil an billa seo cóthbhachtach.
And our next speaker is Damien from USA.
At the minute, the country has been propped up on education from community groups, from student unions, from online resources and from our friend groups. But we've either missed out on large swaths of students or they've been educated incorrectly. And this will continue to happen unless we have fact-based information in our curriculums in schools. We have students leaving schools not knowing about consent. We have students who are LGBT who have no knowledge about sex. And we don't talk about minorities and sex. We exclude LGBT students, we exclude disabled students, and we exclude students from different ethnic minorities whenever we don't have them in our curriculums. We only have sex ed in a technical sense. If we want to support students, reduce rape and reduce abortions, and protect students when they are at their most vulnerable, we need to bring in meaningful sex education. We have a right to our own bodies, and when we don't educate students about their bodies, we rob them of their bodily autonomy. So we need to fight for this bill and make sure that all our students do have access to sex ed.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers today. Just to reiterate, if you want to get involved in the campaigns more, just let us know. We regularly have stalls and organise things like that. We want to continue to maintain the pressure to keep pushing this bill forward because this is a really important issue that has overwhelming support from the Irish public. So thank you so much, and be sure to take some photos and to put it online. Hashtag #SexEdBill is usually what we're going with and things like that, and be sure to keep an eye on general social media things. Thank you all so much.